Okay, welcome back. This is part 3 of the 3-7 notes. This is number 58. And what I want to do is find the derivative of this function. Okay, but we've got a lot of inside functions to this. Okay, so the first thing that I see is that I've got some quantity raised to the third power. Okay, so I have this giant inside function here. I'm going to call this u. So I'm going to let u equal e to the sine of t over 2 power. Okay, and so if I wanted to rewrite my function over here, I would write y equals u to the third. Okay, and if I take the derivative here, then, because I did the u substitution, because I have other inside functions here, my derivative is going to be y prime is equal to 3u squared times u prime. Okay, so I need to take the derivative here. However, I have a problem. I don't have a rule for this. Plus, I notice that I have an inside function. Okay, plus I notice that I have e raised to a function, sine of t over 2. So I'm going to call that function w. All right? And I'm going to let w equal sine of t over 2. Okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to rewrite u as e to the w. Okay? And because I'm changing up my variables, because I'm using the chain rule, if I find u prime, then I'm going to take my derivative, okay, which the derivative of e to the w is e to the w, but then I have to multiply by the derivative of w, okay? So now let's take the derivative of w, but hold on. Wait a second. I have another inside function. I have this other function t over 2. I'm going to call that function v. So now I'm going to let v equal t over 2. And I'm going to rewrite that as 1/2 times t. Okay? So now let me redo w. Let me rewrite that as sine of v. Okay? So if I found w prime, then that would give me cosine of v, but then I multiply by the derivative of my inside function, which is v prime. So now I come over here and I say, all right, well, what's v prime? Okay, and v prime is just 1/2. All right? So now I found all my derivatives. Now I need to go back and chain it all back together. So what I want to do is I want to write w prime in terms of v and v prime. Okay, so I have my values, and I'm going to substitute these values into w prime. Okay, so I'm going to write w prime like this. And I'm going to say that that's cosine of t over 2 times 1/2. Okay, that's my w prime. Now what I want to do is I want to write my u prime. Well, now that I have my w prime and I have w, I can substitute those back in. I can chain them back together. So then u prime then becomes e to the w, which is sine of t over 2. And then I'm going to multiply that by w prime, which is cosine of t over 2 times 1/2. Let me move that down. I love technology. Okay. All right, so now that I have u prime and I have u, I can go back and write the derivative of y. Okay. And so if I rewrite this, I'm going to get y prime is equal to 3 times u. All right, well, u was e to the sine of t over 2 power. All right. And then that's all raised to the 2nd power. So that's my u. Okay. And then I have to multiply this whole thing by u prime. Well, u prime is all this stuff. So e to the sine of t over 2 power, and then multiply that by cosine of t over 2 times 1/2. Okay? So we've got to expand it out, identify all of our inside functions, and then bring it all back together. Okay? So let's take a look at number 68. All right? And this is going to have multiple chain rules as well. First thing I'm going to do to identify this, to see what I need to do, I'm going to rewrite it. Y equals the quantity cosine of secant squared of 3t. And this whole thing is raised to the 4th power. Okay, so identifying what your inside functions are, one of the ways I think about it is like peeling an onion. Okay, if I peel off an onion, I have another layer, and I just keep peeling off that onion. Okay, and the more you peel, the more it stinks. All right, so my first inside function is all this stuff. Okay, so u is equal to cosine of secant squared of 3t. All right. So I'm going to rewrite my y as y equals u to the 4th, okay? So if I took the derivative of that using the chain rule, I'm going to get 4u cubed and then times u prime, okay? So I got to take the derivative of this. But I have a bunch of inside functions, okay? So the first thing I notice is that I have another piece right here. I'm going to call that I'm going to call that W, okay? And so W is equal to, and I'm going to rewrite this as secant of 3t, this whole quantity cubed or squared, okay? So then I have another inside function. I'm going to call this V. So then I'm going to move this down here. V is equal to secant of 3t. And I have another inside function, so I got to do this all again. I'll call this, I don't know, T, W, I'll just, Z. Okay, so then Z is equal to 3t. Okay, so now, what I want to do is I'm going to rewrite my U in terms of W. Okay, so U is equal to cosine of W. So if I take the derivative here, U prime, I get negative sine of W, and then I multiply by W prime. Okay, so now I need to figure out what W prime is. Well, I've got to rewrite this one as W is equal to V squared. So W prime is equal to 2V times V prime. Okay? So now I need to figure out what V prime is. So V prime is equal to secant of Z. Wait, hold on. Not V prime, just V. V is equal to secant of Z. So then V prime is going to equal secant of Z times tangent of Z times Z prime. Well, Z prime is just 3. All right? So Z prime is just equal to 3. All right, so what I want to do, let's just chain it all back together. Okay, so now, and it might, all right, this is going to get running out of room here. All right, so V prime is equal to secant of 3t times tangent of 3t times 3, okay? And I'm just substituting Z and Z prime in for the into V prime, okay? Now, for W prime, okay, W prime, that's going to be 2 times V, so 2 times secant of 3t times V prime, which is secant of 3t times tangent, oh dear, 3t times tangent of 3t times 3. okay? Now, chain it all back up to here. So then u prime is equal to negative sine of w, which is secant squared of 3t times w prime, which is all this stuff. So 2 secant of 3t times secant of 3t times tangent of 3t times 3. Okay? All right, so now that I got u prime, I can plug it all back into y prime. So now y prime is going to be this big, long thing. 4 times u, well, u was cosine of secant squared, so cosine of secant squared of 3t. Okay, that's that whole thing cubed. And then times u prime, which is negative sine of secant squared of 3t, that whole thing, times 2 times secant of 3t. And I'm just going to square that because I got 2 of them. Okay, then times tangent of 3t, and then times 3. Okay, you can simplify these things. Okay, this is a lot of work. It's a lot. There's a lot going on here. But if you rewatch this video and follow these steps and follow this pattern, then the chain rule isn't too bad. But I write this stuff out every time. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. And this was coming to you live from First Hour. Hope you enjoyed it.